We're live. It's Wednesday morning, April 15th. Hi, Kristin.
Hi, it's my first live ever, so thank you.
Yay, congratulations. It's
you.
fun. Once you break the ice, you can get on there and chat.
It's like a podcast, just live. So like anything I say will be held against me.
Well, one of the things I particularly like about the Substack Live is that your audience can tune in. So you're having some sort of interaction as you go. So I'll use that opportunity to say, hey, listeners, go ahead and put questions in the chat.
Or say hi.
Let's introduce ourselves.
Where you're calling from, that kind of thing. We like to know who's listening.
I mean, that is a perk of Substack Lives, is you can do that. Like, hey.
Right.
So I'll introduce myself and give your bio my best shot.
Sure.
So I'm Liz Reitzig, Raw Milk Mama on Substack, and you're probably listening to this on the Nourishing Liberty podcast on Spotify or Substack or iTunes or whatever the Apple podcast thing is. I don't even know. Anyway, it's a Nourishing Liberty podcast all about your food security, your food systems, and how you fit into them. And today I'm talking to Kristin King. And Kristin, from what I know about her, she is an expert in all things AgTech. And she wrote a fascinating article recently about AI. And from what I understand, Kristin, you have a much bigger book coming out really soon about the same thing, which is AI and tech in ag. How is that impacting us? What is going on? How do we see that impacting our food security? And what have you seen change over the years? But Kristin, go ahead. Where can people find you? And tell us what the name of the book is, if it has a name already.
Yep.
And where to find you, and fill in the gaps that I didn't fill in on your bio. What's important to you? Why are you doing this?
That's great. Thank you, Liz. The funny thing is I'm on everything. We were just discussing LinkedIn briefly before, but that's probably where I'm the largest. I have the largest audience on LinkedIn. The other thing I have is obviously Instagram and all the things. And so my name is obviously Kristin King, and there's a million Kristin Kings out there. So usually find me Kristin M. King, which is my middle initial. I also have a podcast. It's Bites and Bites podcast. So bites like you bite something, and computer bites. You can find me there. And obviously here on Substack, I am Kristin M. King on Substack. My publication is named the same because I'm boring. And the book is Securing What Feeds Us, Cybersecurity in Food and Agriculture. So the best part is I don't just cover cyber, I'm covering cyber physical. So as we know in food and agriculture, our systems aren't totally digital, but the ones that are digital are connected to physical things that affect the physical world. So nobody's really talking about that. And that's where my intersection hits with food and agriculture. And that's something that I really love. So yeah, AI is definitely a conversation. It's going to get bigger. And the article was about deepfakes and AI. And we've all been probably victimized by AI on some level when it comes to digital imagery or videos. It's going to be a big problem in agriculture because we already have a lot of disinformation, misinformation about food in general, people's opinions, trending influencers, things like that. And then AI and deepfakes are just going to make it so much worse. So I wrote the article about, hey, how can we deal with this now? Because let's be proactive instead of reactive. Because as a species, we're really good about being reactive and not proactive. Sometimes I wonder how we got out of the cave and got away from the dinosaurs. However, this is my response to that article was about that, because I couldn't really write so much about it in the book directly because we didn't have a lot of information or examples yet. And right after I had submitted my manuscript, like magic, stuff started happening. So I wrote the article in response to that. The book is out for pre-order. You can get it on any platform you choose to get a book on. Even if you want it from your local bookstore, you can obviously order from there. And it releases September 29th as the official date. I'm already a bestseller on Amazon, which is such a weird thing to say out loud. And it was announced last night when I was doing a presentation, and I kind of cringed because I didn't expect all of this so fast. And I'm just so glad that the community is embracing, both on the cyber front and the food and ag front, about this discussion. And obviously, Liz, for having this conversation. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much overlap in what we do, Kristin. And, in our preliminary conversation, we learned we have so much personal overlap in ideas and what food security actually means and how AI and the AgTech may seriously impact our food security. So we share a lot of the same concerns.
Yep.
I'm glad to hear that. And congratulations on your book. That is exciting. I
Thank
remember what it felt like to finish my book. And woo, mine is not on Amazon, though. You have to go to my website to get it, which I prefer that. My proclivity is to stay away from AI and tech on the personal side, on the personal level.
You also self-publish too, which I think is incredible because I know the amount of work that goes in the back house. I have a publisher. I'm very lucky in that regard, that Wiley decided to take a chance on me, which I think is amazing. But I give you so much credit, Liz, because that is such an undertaking in itself. Like that's a whole other set of skills you probably had to learn. So kudos to you for doing that.
Well, thanks. It was quite the mountain to climb, but climb it I did. So let's focus on some of the things that we wanted to address.
Yeah.
So we talked about really like where did this all start? Where did we start with this idea that agriculture needed to be automated and AI'd and the big tech?
I like AI'd. I'm going to use that list.
So I remember when I first started working on food security issues, this was like pretty much 20 years ago, a little more. And the National Animal Identification System was the big thing. It was a really big threat to our small producers. Really, it was a big threat to our larger ones too. And the solution, the USDA had this idea that there's going to be this animal disease outbreak. And the solution was this really high-tech involved process of identifying every place, they called it a premises, every place where an animal lived or passed through, and then RFID tagging every single animal, except in the case of large confinement operations where the whole batch got tagged, and then tracking every single animal movement. And you and I mean, I'm sure you have thoughts on that, but most people can look at that and be like, that's ridiculous. It's basically digital birth certificates for every goat, every chicken, every pig, every cow, and then tracking their movement across their whole entire lives. So the original structure of that program did not happen the way the USDA had in mind at the time. However, they used the language they got back from the farmers, especially the small farmers who were outraged about this and basically said, like, we are not going to do this.
Yeah.
They used that language to just repackage the whole thing. But Kristin, did AgTech start there, or was that just the latest version of it? And then what's happened since then?
Sure. I think that the animal tag situation was a reaction rather than a proaction, to be truthful. I think that it was trying to deal with a lot of things really fast in a way that was tripping over itself. I'm not necessarily against tagging. I think it just needs to be done in a better way that's not so cumbersome to the producer. But that's just my opinion again. The AgTech actually started on the farm. I mean, believe it or not, it started on the farm. It started with a great idea, probably from a farm kid, and was probably solving one problem that was really niche for that particular farm or that particular industry or section of agriculture. I have no problems with the fact that you come up with solutions, right? That's great. You got to make stuff work. I think everybody can respect that, especially in agriculture, because that's what everybody does all day long. They troubleshoot. The problem was as soon as you attached Silicon Valley money to the AgTech, it started to bastardize it, I guess is probably the polite way to say it. And it took it away from the roots of what it was. It just became a mass production. Now, something that's not spoken about a lot when it comes to AgTech is, sure, you got this tech, it's gone into the wild. The problem is the way it was designed and the way it was created was not done with security in mind. Security has to be bolted on at the end of it. That's the truth of a lot of products, from your devices in your home that you can call out and ask to turn a light on, to your smartphone, to many things are not done with security by design. It's a flaw that we've done because we decided that it would be cheaper and faster to get it out without security putting on literally on the board, if you will, of the device. I'm not here to debate that. I have massive issues with that. However, it starts with the actual physical device is not secure. Okay, great. So now we've established that. And now we've moved into, okay, now it's being used in whatever capacity it's being used for. And what is someone supposed to do if their Wi-Fi or their connection or their accounts get hit? It's going to affect that tech. It's already in the news. We've seen it in multiple places and it's happening. So how are we supposed to deal with that? Because we didn't even know we were supposed to just secure it, because it should have come secure. This is another problem and another layer of crap that people have to deal with. And I on behalf of the industry that I don't necessarily belong to the whole of it, I'm sorry you have to deal with that. I'm sorry when things happen. And I'm not one of those security people that's like, yes, things have happened and I'm going to go crazy. And yeah, heck. I'm not like that at all. I'm like, oh my God, the human element. Let's get into it. Yeah. So really what it comes down to is AgTech was meant to solve problems. It technically does, but it's not for everybody. And with the sustainability goals in different places, and we've already seen this in the UK with some of our friends over there, they're being forced into technology that they don't necessarily need. That's just going to make the job a million times harder because they've got to learn the tech. And on top of it, it's expensive as hell. So how are producers supposed to pay for this? There's no, rebates. There's no tax rebates. There's no incentives. It's just figure it out. That's your fault, your problem. So I agree to some level with the tags, Liz.
Let me throw something in there real quick, because, we said we're not going to go deep into the Farm Bill, but one of the things that the Farm Bill does cover is funding for these programs. But to me, I might see that differently than you, because I see that as, if it's going to be subsidized, if it's going to be paid for, it incentivizes more adoption of this potentially harmful, or in some ways harmful, technology that doesn't serve all the farmers. And yet it's like building the infrastructure that then everybody has to operate on, regardless of funding or desire.
I think it also kind of divides a bit of a class system in agriculture, because there's probably going to be different recommendations for who gets the tech and who does not get the tech. So it might actually divide up a little bit, or who gets the subsidies. I think that could be really concerning. And I realize that's like a hot button issue and totally off subject, but that could be something that I see coming down the pipeline is, there will be restrictions based on, I don't know, how big your herd of cows are, or how much you produce in produce, or whatever the case may be. So I think that there could be some unevenness there, like you just said, in a different way. I don't think anybody's got this right. I don't think anyone's actually really understood what's going on, because the problem is they're creating these legislations, policies, and other thoughts in a boardroom in a way away from any farm. And they need to actually talk to the different segments of farming and producing in order to have a better conversation. Because right now it's just done in, I don't know, the ivory tower, if you will, where it needs to come down and actually stand in the dirt and have a conversation. You know as well as I do that agriculture is built on trust.
Yeah.
Trust. And there's a lot of distrust on this. And now you've got more and more tech coming in, and then you have people having their accounts breached in different places and other things that have nothing necessarily to do with their day job. It's just something that happens. How are they supposed to combat that? You've got text scams that are happening to the elderly division of agriculture constantly. Yeah. So again, they should be dealing with more of the real-time issues that are happening, in my opinion. Then let's chuck something new at it, because that's not necessarily going to fix the problem. It always comes back down to people and process for me over the technology. Whatever tech you got, that's great. But if you are breaking protocol around it in an insecure manner, or if you didn't know, and if you're not offboarding your people properly, you're not cutting access, you're not changing passwords, you're not doing like just the little basic things, what's the point of even having security around your tech, or even having a conversation around it? That's something that's really hard. And I'm not blaming any producers or farmers here, because that's not your job. Your job is to do your job. Yeah. And I think that we're making it harder for them. And I think that by adding this layer of financial pressure, it's just going to make people more stressed. And we already know it's a super stressful job. So, and labor intensive. And I think it's good that tech is trying to solve some of those problems. Like, I'm really excited about spraying drones, right? I'm a total geek for it. I think it's incredible tech, but it's not secure by design and it's not secure in general. So I
Did
think,
you say spraying drones?
yeah, so they'll lift up a large drone, not those little ones, not those little teeny weeny ones you see, blasting off, or kids doing whatever they do. These are like proper full industrial drones. And what they'll do is they'll take them up over like a vineyard and they'll spray the vineyard, whether it's pesticide or herbicide or even water, they'll spray it down. There's a farm producer that I know that is doing it for tomatoes, because obviously we know nightshade will give rash if you're standing in there for too long. So in order to help with the safety of his workers, he'll send the drones up. Now, granted, those are expensive. They're very pricey drones. So the fact that you can order it as a service is kind of cool. But it's not going to be for everyone. I don't think everyone's going to need that in general. Now, that's precision tech I understand and can get behind, because that makes sense to me. But it's not going to be the way of the future for everybody. And there's no way that that's going to work for all.
Well, and let's back up a little bit, because you mentioned something. I'm not quoting you. I'm just kind of revisiting. You mentioned something about like hacking and some of the liabilities, not just in not having security, like even situations that are supposedly secure, there's always going to be dangers and liabilities of people who can still hack it. So can you talk about like what you've seen with the hacks and the liabilities in centralized systems? And, if you want, you can use the meat processing plant hack that happened right at the beginning of COVID as an example of like, why are these systems like, what are the concerns? What are the real world concerns of some of the ways that we've consolidated the data, and how can a hack impact our real lives?
Sure. Yeah, we can use JBS as an example for sure. I actually was giving a talk in a cybersecurity experts scenario last night, and nobody knew what JBS was, which is so bizarre to me, because it's the largest ransomware payout to date that I'm aware of, unless there's a new one that just popped up and I've missed it. It was $11 million US dollars was paid out in ransom to get their equipment back online so they could continue to operate.
Okay, so let's back up and just make sure that we spell everything out. So this is a meat processing company, JBS. They're one of the big four in the meat monopoly in America, and their whole processing facilities operate on being completely tapped into all the latest tech.
Yeah, I mean, they're a big organization. They do something like 20% of the U.S. meat. They're also really big in Canada and Australia. So they're a global company. So that has a global footprint. We also have a global food supply. I mean, I think people forget that, but we do have a global food supply. So this happened in 2021. So right after the pandemic, it was in the throes of the pandemic, I guess is what we'll say, which exasperated it, I'm sure, on top of it. It was a hacker group that was associated with Russia that hacked them. And what they did was they held them for ransom. So what they do is you essentially log into your system, or your system will display a screen that says, pay us, or otherwise you don't get access to your system, and we'll delete everything and wipe it out. And they'll make all these demands. They want it in Bitcoin, so it's untraceable, which is even crazier. So now when you're negotiating your ransom, I mean, most people don't know how to get Bitcoin, so that's even more complicated. Their entire system collapsed across all the countries I mentioned. Australia couldn't get beef into their grocery stores for, I think, almost a couple weeks. And then we had a beef shortage here. It got so bad here, Liz, that we couldn't even price our meat because nothing was moving. And that's crazy to think about. The other thing that a lot of people don't realize about that, yeah, okay, the hack was bad. Yes, it stopped operations. Yes, all those fun things that came with it. Data was definitely compromised. They probably had different credentials that were sold on the black web, and the dark web rather, and not the black web, the dark web, geez. And I think the thing that's really frustrating about that is Now you've got secondary attacks that are going to happen from that, whether that's personal or business again. But the ramifications on supply chain and regional supply chains specifically, in all these countries I mentioned, was devastating. So let's think about it just from the basic front. You are a producer. You've raised all of these cows. They're ready to go. You got your contract with JBS. The truck shows up. You load your cattle on, and it's gone. Right?
Yeah.
That cattle couldn't get out of the trucks when this happened. You've got cattle that's now starving, defecating on itself, waiting to go. And it's dangerous as hell to transport cattle. Everybody knows that. It's very scary for drivers. So now you've got confined animals that are ginormous and have zero cares about you. And now we've got meat that's getting stressed out, which is not good for health. We understand all of that. Then they had backup situations where they couldn't finish production because the machines had stopped. So now you have to do some of it by hand, which is super dangerous for workers. So now you've got safety issues all over the place. And then how are you supposed to get the meat transported again to a secondary location to hold it? You can't back up the cows to the farm. That's not going to work. There's no feed. There may not even be a lot at that point. They might have already rotated or whatever they do. And it created this whole gap in regional supply chain that couldn't handle the buffer. So this is why I always say that when a mandate comes down, it's really going to hurt the local supply chain and the regional supply chains first, whether it's a rule about fertilizer or any type of new ag tech or things like that. It's the local and the regional that are going to hurt the most, not necessarily national to that degree. We don't have the infrastructure to support that. And this is why you and I also agree with a lot of things too, Liz, is because we're big advocates for local and regional support and purchasing and growth in general for our food supply. But the problem is that the squeeze is happening, and that's what's becoming more of a problem. It's going straight to the corporation. So the fact that this large corporation got punched and it affected all the way down the chain to the point where people literally could not get their contracts fulfilled, so they weren't getting paid. And then you have all this animal problems on top of it. I mean, it was like the worst case scenario. And then after that, it sort of became a rolling ball, if you will, of problems to start rolling through. The other thing that scares me too, Liz, is that because JBS is a publicly traded company, they were required by law to file an SEC claim to report what was happening. So if you are a small producer or a medium producer, you are not required by law to report that you had a cyber incident. So we actually have no accurate data of how bad it's hitting the food and agricultural sector, because I mean, who's going to raise their hand and tell people that they had a cyber attack? The shame of it is so intense that nobody's going to say anything. They're worried about perception and all these other things. So I know that we're getting hit more frequently than people are talking about, but I can only talk about the ones that we know about because obviously I'm going to protect people and things like that. So this is happening so much more frequently and increasing numbers, and it's attacking all industries too. And this is where I get a little upset because it's part of the critical infrastructure of all nations, food and agriculture. But yet we focus more heavily on financial and healthcare, and rightfully so. I'm not mad at keeping people healthy, but they have the same systems in their environments as we do in food and agriculture, whether that's a type of production line or an HVAC system or something like that. We are using the same equipment. So if that equipment's getting popped on that sector, it's going to get hit on ours if it isn't already. So I think that there's a crossover here that we haven't looked at on a national critical infrastructure level that needs better protecting for small and medium to large producers.
So wait, are you saying, so like with the financial, when you say the same equipment and if it gets hit on their side, it's going to get hit on our side? Can you, like, I'm not sure I'm following. Can you connect?
So there's a vulnerability that's discovered on a piece of equipment. Let's say Rockwell or a Siemens like a PLC,
like a hardware,
correct, like an actual physical device. So something that controls like the conveyor belt. We'll just use that's easiest. Everybody can visualize that.
Okay.
If that's that particular machine there's a vulnerability that's found, whether it's a vulnerability that nobody knew about, which is 0 day and I haven't discovered it, or it's just a standard vulnerability that has been there and nobody's bothered to patch it or deal with it. If that gets hit, it's clearly going to be a problem across that machine's life in all the machines that were ever created to do that, unless it's been dealt with. And this is the other thing that's hard too, is that I guess we're kind of behind the times because we have no regulation to help us. There's no common language. Nobody has created policy that really helps address security controls specifically. And I'm talking, and within food and agriculture, like we can bolt into other ones that are there, but they're volunteerless, so nobody's going to do anything.
Well, and yeah, I mean, to your point about, maybe you said this before we started recording, but to your point about different structure for different levels of farming, like to some extent, I mean, I want to address some of the other things you said, but to some extent, there has to be some voluntary basis of it, or just a different common language for different size farms.
Exactly. And it has to me, a small, medium size farm should consider any type of digital security or any cyber physical security as part of their safety. So you do safety checks, just run it as part of that. That's the world you should sit in. Yeah. In terms of the larger ones, and someone just said, big ag sucks. The larger ones have the finances to be able to hire people like me or others that I know that work for them, for that organization. The problem is that we have other residual issues of nobody's really got a good handle on third-party risk. And people don't really understand operational technology, which is all the equipment that powers the modern world, like those conveyor belts.
Speaking of common language, Kristin.
Yeah, so that's what I said. That's why I said it the way I said it. So people will be like, wait, what? And so that it starts to become this snowball effect.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because it's not like, machine learning, which was early AI and other equipment like this wasn't connected on networks that were just for the internal part of the business, not the external, which is the internet, the internal, for decades. And we had no issues necessarily. It's only until we started putting things onto the internet that it became a problem. And don't get me wrong, I love the fact that you can use your smartphone to see what your fire suppression system looks like, what your irrigation system looks like, what's going on with your cameras. I love that because farmers and producers live on their phones. We all know this. We do too. I mean, everybody lives on their phone. But I love that, but there's so many things that can go wrong with that. And I don't want to come across as some doomsday crier that has a bell, and yelling. I don't want that to be happen. I want safety and security for all. And that means food security too. But we can't do that unless we have a better understanding of what we need to secure around our food. And that's why I wrote the book. That's why I talk the way I talk and do what I do.
The story you told, I mean, that was a really good example, I think, of the JBS hack in 2021 and the consequences of that, the impact. And, Farmer Sam Schuritz, those poor cows. And it's like, these are the things that are invisible to most people, even the people who care about these issues, they're still relatively invisible. And, given that you and I both deep dive on all of this, it's like we can completely geek out over it, but people are not really thinking about what is happening on the back end when that gate slams shut.
Yeah.
And what is happening, one of the things, I know we could do a whole separate episode on this, but what is going on with the workers in those big industrial processing facilities? There's huge risk to them. And like you say, that's something I hadn't even really thought that deeply about, is that the hack means that all of the automated processing equipment has to then be done manually. And oh my word, I wouldn't even touch it. Right. But what are we doing to our people? Yes, the animals, all of it, the people, the animals in that industrial, really highly centralized, data-driven, tech-driven system. And how are we protecting it? But so you're talking a little bit about that data. How do we protect it? But what happens when we continue to consolidate the data, and who owns it, and what do they do with it? And talk to me a little bit about data. And then I definitely want to touch on some of what another thing that might deserve its own separate episode, but the rise of AI in terms of our perceptions.
Yes.
So first, data consolidation, who owns it? What do they do with it? What are the risks?
Sure. Honestly, it depends on the provider of the product that determines where your data is going to go. Some of the big players, and I'm not going to name names because we don't do that here, but it's a big tractor company. I'm sure everybody's aware of it. It's one of those wink, wink moments. They own your data. You don't own your data. They own it. So all of your yield, your counts, anything you put into that, your square footage, it's all in there. What they do with that data, I honestly can't say. So let's speculate that a little bit. They could take it and use it for their own purposes, meaning they could have better metrics to help have better precision farming. They could take it to their data scientists and make it better and do all the things. I'm sure that's happening. I hope it's happening. They could sell your data. So it could go to data scientists or data aggregators, and then it could be loaded into different programs for other people to use. It could go from anything from like GIS software to supply chain software, stuff like that. People who are working blockchain to understand different things. It could go to consumer-based products, of course, to help figure out, is there a rise in carrots this year because we've got a carrot explosion or something. Actually, carrots are kind of trending right now. But that kind of thing. It could also help influence marketing. It could be sold off as potential understanding for nation state tomfoolery, as I usually say.
How does that bring it back to the Zoom way in? How does that matter to me? How does it matter to somebody who's getting food for their family? Because I think at this point we're all so used to giving away our data.
Yeah, no,
what we're buying. I mean, it's terrible.
It's a reality. We're all just so annoyed with it. We're kind of just done with it and understanding it. I think.
But why does that matter on the food security level? Like what I'm getting, if the big unnamed tractor company owns all the data that the farmers are creating.
So I think we could really go down some deep conspiracy holes here, honestly. However, I think what it really matters is to me as a consumer, so we'll just put the consumer hat on.
Yeah.
If the grocery companies who have been raising prices like crazy since the pandemic, we all know this. And I'm not going to obviously get on the cost of eggs or any of that kind of crazy conversation. However, we all know the groceries are increasing. That is driven by the corporations that are selling our groceries. It's not from the producer side. It's not from anything else. It's from there. So we all know where it's coming from. So to me, does that mean there could be more price gouging because they have this data of how much yield is coming off a farm every year in different places? And they have great ways to chuck that into AI and spit out calculations and all these other fun things, right? So then we become data points ourselves. We already are data points. What am I talking about? But to me, that data can be a way of kind of controlling what we're purchasing, when we're purchasing it, the amounts we're purchasing. They could also hold back and create, a fear of missing out on food, or they could create kind of a supply and demand moment where they could hold some of that food back and they know what's going to happen. There could be some really nefariously horrible things that they could do. I hope they don't hold food back. I don't want that food insecurity feeling. I want people to get what they want when they want it. I would prefer people to have more nutritious food. Obviously, I don't want everybody to race to McDonald's every day, but if that's your life, that's fine. But I think that they could do that. They also could partner with other types of companies, like some of the big food chains, restaurants and things like that. They could be all kinds of crazy things. Like, we're only going to supply this food chain with this stuff versus others.
Yeah.
The nefariously horrible, evil things that could happen and the data manipulation could get wild. I would like to, I would like to be hopeful about data. I've spoken to a lot of data scientists that are working on the ag side, and they're trying to improve things for how do we deal with global climate change? How do we use the data to tell us, are we going to have Florida oranges now be Ohio oranges, as an example, because the way the global climate changes? How are we doing that? Also, the data can help with pricing, that kind of thing. I in terms of positive pricing, not negative pricing. How do we deal with that? How do we move forward with everything that's happening? Or how do we deal with conflict, and how does that affect our food supply? That kind of thing. Now, I would hope that data is being used for that reason and would be continued to use for that reason. But it does concern me that data it's like the new currency.
Yeah,
it is. We're hostage to it, just like we are with currency. It's like the new form of capitalism, and it scares me a little bit because that isn't always a positive moment, as we know in history. And yeah, it's concerning. And to swing into your AI conversation, obviously AI loves data. AI needs data, and the more data it's got, the more it can give us different things. I think everybody knows that AI hallucinates quite a bit. So
Yes.
my concern is who is reviewing that data, and is anybody validating that data?
Okay.
That's
So,
a big.
so you're okay. So let me follow. So
Sure.
connecting the dots here.
Mhm.
Number one, I want to say, like, from everything you just said, like, you don't have to be like conspiratorial to see all the potential bad that can happen with that kind of consolidation of data. It only takes one wicked person,
Yeah, it's true.
or
Mhm.
AI jumping the fence. And so what we're talking about is, what you're talking about here is, like, you have all of this data, and then AI aggregates that, or has access to that information. Okay, right? So, and then you use the term in your writing, Internet of Things. Is that what you're talking about now, where AI takes control over this big, huge consolidated data and extrapolates things? And then how do they use that? Or
So,
am I not even asking the right
no,
question?
you're fine. So Internet of Things is IoT devices. So think the birdhouse that has a camera on it. Think your automated sprinkler system. Think about the little lawnmowers you can buy now, which I think is crazy that you have an AI powered lawnmower to mow your lawn, or the snowblower, that guy who went viral because of the snowblower, which actually I think that's cool. But technically, those are driven by AI tools in order to do the job. So you give it a command and a prompt, like you would with if you're using one of the programs, whether Anthropic or OpenAI or whatever you use. You give it a prompt and it understands it. So, but the thing about those devices is they already have software that has the prompting in them, so they already are preloaded to do what you need it to do. You just tell it to go, and that is where I think there's a bit of a gray area, because people don't realize it's not the device itself, it's the AI, it's the software running the device that's the AI. And to me, that's the two-layer fold, where the device needs to be secure, meaning it should be secure when it was made, but it's not. And then you've got the software layer that needs to have security on it. And that goes from many different ways. The real issue with AI is perception, and you kind of leaned on this.
Yeah.
We as humans perceive what we see as truth. It's how we survive. It's a survival technique. It's something that we've been doing.
Neuroscience.
Correct, ever. And what we see, we believe. And when we see something that causes us to have an emotional reaction, so whatever that is, we can use an example of, I don't know, an animal being mistreated on a video. That definitely gets everybody a rise, no matter what kind of person, unless you're a horrible individual, I suppose.
Right.
But you'll get a rise out of that. The problem with AI is that it capitalizes on that perception. It capitalizes on that emotional moment, where if you have, even if it's a fun video, like a chimpanzee bringing a doorbell, which is just a whole absurd thing.
Yeah.
People think, oh, that's funny and cute and stuff, but that's really teaching people what chimp behavior is. No, it's teaching people what chimp behavior isn't. So we're learning these things, and especially if you take it to the younger generations that have never known a world without AI or the internet,
and are increasingly disconnected from our real physical
correct.
world and our sensory interaction with the real physical world.
You made a good point earlier, Liz, about the invisible layer of the food system. We live in a modern world where we're privileged enough not to have to know how our food system works. We are so far removed from it now because we don't have to go slaughter our own meat. We don't have to go harvest our own vegetables. I mean, you can choose to do all that. If you choose to do that, you can, but it's more of a hobby or an activity rather than a life thing, and because of that, we no longer teach our food system. I mean, we teach it to the biological level, like seed and ground grows food, animal is birthed, that we understand all of that, but we don't understand our modern food system, how many touch points it hits before it gets to your table. I mean, having a cup of coffee right now, the amount of touch points of technology for this bag of coffee to get to my cup that's sitting here right now was probably hundreds. And I don't even acknowledge any of that. I just drink the coffee because that's what I've been afforded in my privilege in my life. So I think if we should have a bit more training so people understand this, and it needs to be done at an earlier age. I'm sorry, there's no way we're going to be able to undo this for everybody. But until we have that better understanding of how our food gets to our plate, we're going to believe anything we see. And that's really concerning. It's really concerning. And this is why I tell people, when you see something that upsets you online, whether it's whatever it is, I don't care what it is, take a 5-second break, take a deep breath, and move past the emotions of it, and then look at it again. And then you're probably going to see that it's garbage. It's hard. I practice what I preach. It's hard. It's hard.
I know it's really hard, but that really touches on, okay, we're going to go a little bit, we're going to go like this, and then like this, and then like this, into like tech and AI and neuroscience.
Staying on for this, we're definitely like serpentine everywhere.
I know, but this is wild. So like everything you're saying is like the propaganda piece of it, which, you know, if you read Raw Milk Mama, if you read my stuff on Nourishing Liberty, like I dive deep into the propaganda of the past, basically 200 years, the industrial food system. Like, how has this propaganda trained us and manipulated us into certain buying behaviors and accepting the infrastructure that we have today of our food system. Mm-hmm. And so then, like you're saying, AI. And so to be really specific about that, what you're talking about is AI generated image, text, and video, correct? Mm-hmm. Which takes a human player still to input prompts.
Correct. And most of the time when these videos are created, they actually are entered properly on whatever social media they're on that says this is an AI generated video. But because we can reshare and we can repost, we don't have to have that on it. So that's why these viral posts go the way that they go. And then it disassociates from the original post, which was AI generated. The example I used in my article was the SNAP incident that happened. Yes. It was legitimately an AI video that originally prompted that whole outrage that happened. So if you think about it, it was just an absolute waste of energy. It should have never happened. There shouldn't have been such an outrage, but because
I'll link to that article so people have context of what you're talking about. But it was basically what you're talking about, what I'm talking about. It was an AI generated video that triggered people to react emotionally to certain ways about food stamps and who's getting them and who's benefiting from them. And it was entirely made up. Yeah. So that goes to your point of like, hey, AI is pivoting. Well, I mean, arguably always was a way to increase propaganda. And what I study and what I research is like how we respond to that propaganda, how it's being used to shift our food system. Yeah. So I think we've zigzagged enough, and I want to hear your reaction to that. And like, what happens next, and what do we do because of what we're seeing, and how does that level of perception? This is a lot, Kristin. Sorry. How does that level of perception impact our local household and community food security?
Well, it rattles trust, which is we know the food and agricultural sector is built on. It's built on trust. And if you can't go into a place and trust the food that you're going to get, it's going to irrevocably change how you view food. If you've ever experienced food poisoning, I hope you haven't. Everybody knows that you now will distrust that type of food for the rest of your life, or until at least you figure out, like I have a love-hate relationship with oysters. It's a true story. I don't hate them. I just have had one bad reaction that's kind of kept me off them, even though I've had them since. So it's that kind of moment where you're going to be like, I don't know about that. Maybe I shouldn't trust that. And then obviously if you throw the influencer space right behind that, it becomes even more of just an annoyance and in your face. What people can do. So here's some fun tips and tricks. If you own a farm, or if you're a producer, take pictures of your operation. And I know that feels counterintuitive, right? Like, why would I take pictures? It's just going to make it worse. You need to be able to document what your farm actually looks like if you ever get caught in one of these deep fake videos, because AI is still really bad at determining the small nuanced details, like that notch that you have in the barn because you hit it. Your tractor hit it on the way in 3 seasons back that you never bother to repair because it's not damaging or anything like that. It's just aesthetically unpleasing. AI would probably make it look like it wasn't there. If the detail on your latches or your gate or your lock, those will all be done wrong on AI, whereas for your actual camera will capture it perfectly. I know that seems like a lot of extra work, but you have your phone in your hand. It takes 3 seconds to take a photo. I mean, it's not a big deal. Or you could tell somebody, you could tell your kids to do it, or a friend, or anything. Just take pictures of your farm, especially when it comes to like your equipment, and then save them somewhere where it's in an incident response or disaster recovery type folder, or your business continuity planning. Just save it there so you can deal with it if something ever happened.
Does that apply to the small producers, or
yes,
does that?
Absolutely. I would
Okay.
100% do that, because everybody knows, well, I think the bad actors know. And I say everybody, when I mean everybody, I mean bad actors, or threat actors, whatever you want to call them, the bad guys. And they know that if they took down your situation with an AI video or some type of propaganda that made your farm look like you guys are evil people, you're going to want to be able to defend yourselves, because they know that they could completely bankrupt you and take you out, and it would be no skin off their teeth. Now let's take about that and the bad actors in a different level. Bad actors as agro-terrorists or eco-terrorists or radical extremists. And we all know they're there because they come up all the time in the headlines, but they also come up in our conversations. This is something that I also deal with because it's part of safety and security. For me, it's paramount. They're using more digital technology. They will start using these deep fake videos because it's certainly a lot easier than going in and sneaking in onto your farm. You know what I mean? If they can do damage to your reputation and perception, and you're no longer able to sell ice cream or milk or eggs or anything you produce at all because you were viewed as being abusive or something shady, that's really crappy. And I wouldn't want that for anybody. So it's just these proactive steps. Someone said preparedness is second nature, when for prevention. And I appreciate that. And that's what we need to start thinking about, is how can we be better prepared? So that's with documentation. That's what those photos are. Even take a video. Like, you can, whatever you can do to prove that this is your facility and this is how it looks, do it. Also too, it probably will come in handy because there'll probably be more audits and things later on in life moving forward. And it's also historical documentation. I mean, who wouldn't want to have pictures of their farm at some point? So that's something you can do. The other thing too is when it comes down to a consumer level, so like you and me, Liz, because we don't own a farm, we're the people that are supporting, we have to take a beat. So when we see something that upsets us, just take a deep breath, relax, realize that you need to look at it from a critical lens, and then evaluate it again. I'm also one of those people that I don't believe something right out of the gate. I need to have at least 3 to 5 verified sources before I'll even consider it to be a factual situation. And I don't mean like from a blog or from like Twitter or X, or what do we call it? I mean, I need to actually see somebody cover it. I need a reporter to tell me what's going on. And I look at different publications around the globe. So until I have a full perspective and picture, and I also don't write about things as a writer. I don't write about things until I know I've got enough information to actually write about them. Like, I've been trying to desperately write an article about what's happening with Iran and the Strait and everything else, but it's a moving target. I can't write about it until we have a little bit more of a calm moment where I can have a conversation of how cybersecurity is going to affect our food supply in this situation as well, because we're already having issues there. So I think people just need to, unfortunately, take a minute and have a little more critical thinking just behind certain things. The other thing too is don't engage with the content.
Well, and to your point on that, I mean, let's go off on a tiny little tangent here that's not necessarily strictly AI or tech related, but propaganda related, because we both cover that. We both are well versed in how it works. So to your point that so how do I want to say this? Like, even if a story is true, like, there are some very true, very real and devastating stories about our government and the way they're attacking some small farms and some not so small farms. And while you can have an individual story that's true and deserves to be heard and have that attention, you can't then extrapolate that story onto hundreds or thousands of other farms. But some of the people who cover this, like, all they're looking for is the shock value and the clicks.
Yep.
And so like you're saying, like, I love that you're covering this, like, get out of your emotions on something, especially if it makes your blood boil. And that's hard, right? Because like we literally have to train ourselves to be like, oh, this is like, or like you find yourself cheering, like, yes, go get him. And you're like, oh, wow, that is a really strong emotional reaction for something that I have never witnessed. I don't have any sensory experience with. And it's just, it's the way tech and visual exposure and AI can then trigger our amygdalas into the kind of reactivity
also
that
speed travels. It's so fast. News used to travel by pony, right? And now it's, you take a breath and it's already gone. It's somewhere else. And I think the speed and the trend and everything, oh God, we are enamored with absurdity online, and we're also super addicted to it. And I'm not talking about the platforms. You can have your own opinions about those, and yet, I mean, they can be addicting at times. But I think the thing about the food and agricultural sector is there's always purpose behind using the technology in general. Like, I don't really think there's a lot of time to sit and scroll, obviously, unless you have time when you're in the tractor, I suppose. But even then, most of the farmers I've spoken to are listening to podcasts or listening to music or something like that while they're doing their job. But the fact that people don't, it's almost like we want to be combative. We want to have these conversations. We want to have this strain because it's a new form of entertainment. It's sort of like the absurdity of like the Thunderdome, but on the internet, and that's something that really kind of makes me cringe because we're letting bad actors and threat actors win, and they're clearly winning. We are playing catch up. We are 100% playing catch up. And it's so stressful as a cybersecurity person because I have my rose-tinted glasses have flown off years back, obviously, and I see the world entirely different. And I'm not going to sit here and start scaring people, but like, we've got really bad things going on and nobody's really doing anything. And the people that are trying to do things are the ones that are getting dragged in the mud for it. And it's hard because, if for all the good intentions, again, I said this last night too, when I was doing my talk at another event, our good intentions are always paved with gold, right? So initially, AgTech was created to be helpful. Initially, AI was created to be helpful. But because human nature is the way human nature is, we've just mucked it up. And and now we have to unravel it in a way that doesn't continue to muck it up. It makes people realize what's going on. So this is why I tell people to stay curious, be critical about it. Think about how one thing affects another thing. And I know systems thinking is something not everybody can do, but you should know cause and effect. If I knocked over my coffee right now, it's going to wreck my keyboard, possibly my laptop, and that's going to really wreck my entire day and possibly my business. So I don't want to knock over my coffee, but I am prepared because I have in a place where I'm not going to swing and hit it right now. So it's kind of that whole like moving forward efficiently moment. And again, if you can navigate online the same way, like, hey, if I think this or if I share this, what's the impact going to be moving forward?
But unfortunately, too many big companies and our government have the coffee cup poised on a very precarious platform right over the keyboard.
Yeah.
And that's like, I think that's where you and I spend most of our time is like, what could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, I do think that we are at such a pivotal point in our history, and it's so wild to think about because people are always like, well, it's worst case scenario. And I want to say we can't have food or it's poisoned. Like, that's worst case. Like, what a silly question to ask me. But what I will say is that we are either already had it and hasn't been announced yet, or it's about to happen soonish. And I mean that in the next few years. Well, we will have a foodborne illness erupt from a cyber attack. It's going to happen. And I get really nervous, and I hang out with a lot of food safety people, and they're great people, and they really are trying. And it's such a frustrating profession as well, because it's very constrained, like mine is in a lot of ways. And you're trying to teach people the right things to do with their food and what not to do with their food and how not to be absurd with it. And I know just enough knowledge to know what I know, and I'm not a food safety expert. I would like to make that very clear. I only know what I know. But the fact that we have now gotten our digital technology to the point where it can affect the actual quality of our food is so crazy to me. And yet we still don't understand our food system.
Yeah, which brings it all back to improving food security, which will also improve food safety on the hyper-local level. And that's someplace where we overlap a lot, Kristin. Like, you're over here, like way up in the stratosphere, thinking about tech and AgTech and things that I don't know and I don't want to study. Thank you very much for studying it. So I don't have to. And then over here, it's like, yet we still have this like really common area of overlap, that one of the, like you said, prevention. We got to be prepared. We got to prevent these things. We got to be proactive. And some of that is getting back to that hyper local level. And that trust comes in again when you know your producer, you know what they're doing, how, if they're vaccinating their animals the way you want them to or not, or closed herd, or which abattoir or butcher they're taking it to, and at what point. I mean, we can know these things on the hyper local level. We can have, raw milk, safe, clean, raw milk when we know our producer, and we're not relying on maybe centralized processing that can then be hacked and can then cause a foodborne illness. So let's speak to that for a minute. Just that nature of.
Yeah. So whenever you're connecting something, you have a potential for connecting to the internet. I should be very clear about that. When you're connecting it to the internet, you have a potential of being attacked if you don't have security in place. So please change your default password out of the gate, meaning whatever they give you to log in, change it after. And don't make it something simple that I could guess right now on air. Please don't do that. And actually, I used to work for an organization a while back. And a few years after I left that organization, I got a phone call from the IT team. And they were like, hey, Kristin, do you remember the legacy password to the servers that were part of this division? And I said, oh, this is a strange question. Yeah, sure. It was baking123 with a capital B. And they're like, oh, and they got on there really quickly, and they're, oh yeah, great, we're in. Have a nice day. And I was like, that was 4 years after I left. You haven't changed your passwords. Please update your passwords. Like, I don't want to have this conversation again. This is a very strange conversation.
Yeah.
Because to me, if I remembered it, who else was remembering it, or who else was doing what? So the dairy industry, to take it to the milk conversation, has been one of the most connected industries and sectors in agriculture as of late.
Yeah.
We'll say after the last decade or so. And unfortunately, because they're connected, and because it's insecure, and because it's designed with insecurity, it is getting punched repeatedly.
Yep.
And it's getting particularly punched by nation states. So that's something that's very concerning, because now you've got an active war happening in dairies. And how is a dairy supposed to deal with that? Like, they're not prepared to deal with being part of a declaration of war because Russia decided one day it didn't like you. And that's a learn real quick moment. So unfortunately, that is happening. It has led to a lot of complications, including cows that have passed because of it. It is so irritating to me because it's such a simple fix, and we haven't done it yet. And the worst part is sometimes they don't know, Liz, who'd actually hack their systems. It could be just like a 15-year-old kid, or someone who found something off of a forum, or it could be the nation state. Mm-hmm. There's no rhyme or reason for a lot of it happening. Someone's just opportunist. The next sector that's going to start getting hit, because it's definitely full of internet connected devices, is fisheries. So aquaculture. I always have to say that slower because I say agriculture so much.
I know.
Yeah, agriculture is going to be a big problem because everything is connected with robots and different devices that are monitoring, whether that's cameras or temperature or, I don't know, whatever fun fish health things are happening. They have robots that clean the nets for fishing. It's really cool sci-fi stuff. If you want to nerd out, go look at that stuff. But because it's so interconnected, it's on the internet, it's going to thus be hit if it hasn't already. So there's all these questions that come up with that. So now we're attacking two major food groups for human beings to live and other things to live. Dairy is huge. We all eat it every day, unless you were lactose intolerant. I'm sorry. But and even then you could take a pill, as my sister would say.
Or get raw.
Yeah, or there you go. But then fish is a really big protein for people all over the world. It's not just a luxury item.
Right. It's not, yeah.
And it's crazy to think that we as human beings are so horrible to each other that we are going to do that. And so the reason why people do this, and the reason why people attack, and I think this is kind of where we're leading in our conversation too, Liz, is it's opportunist, and they can. It's financial because they can usually get some money out of it. Like in the case of JBS, they got quite a bit of money out of it. Whenever they do attack an organization, usually a large one and even a small or medium, this could also happen. They'll take the data that they steal off the machine they've either locked or infiltrated. They'll either reach out across the system and take more, and they'll scrape your data and they'll sell it. So there's like a double payout happening. It just makes it so much more nasty. And then that data gets sold and gets picked up. That includes like passwords and user accounts and all these other fun things that we use to access our digital tech. If they could get your bank statements, they'll go for it too, that kind of thing. They'll grab everything they can get. And that's so irritating, because what is a small to medium producer at a dairy? So, I mean, they just sell ice cream and milk and love their cows and love their lives and loves their jobs. And now they're dealing with this crazy situation. And on top of that, they're dealing with deep fake situations and perception online and other crazy stuff that's happening. I've had a few dairy farmers speak to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, and to the point, like, okay, that is horrible and tragic. I don't want that to happen to any of our dairy farmers. Right. And if we have 1 million small dairy farms scattered throughout, one getting hit is not going to impact. I don't want that to happen. I'm not saying like it's okay, but one getting hit is not going to impact our overall food security in the way that the single 200,000 cow dairy in Colorado getting hit would impact food security in a significant way, like the JBS.
In a significant way, correct. However, in a local and regional way, it would have an effect. So even the big players like Dole packaged lettuce got punched a couple of years back, I think in 24. They couldn't get packaged lettuce onto the shelves. And I realized like that's not a horrible thing. You could buy a head of lettuce and live your life. But some people depend on packaged lettuce because it's easier. They think they don't have to wash it and they can just go quickly make a salad, and that's healthy and nutritious. That's great. But if you can't get it, then that's a little bit frustrating. So I would think on a local level and a regional level, especially if they were a supplier for like schools or things like that, that could be devastating for that pocket of community. And to me, that's just as shitty as, the big ones anyways. But the big one impact, especially JBS and things like that's a trickle effect. It's still having an impact to this day, I'm sure, on some level.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Cleaning up those systems and rebuilding all those systems. They'd have to rebuild those systems, because even if you pay the ransom, that doesn't guarantee you're going to get your data back. And on top of it, it's not going to come back in the way they took it. So it's not going to come back in neat little organized file folders. Then you could just magically put back where you need to. It's going to come back as a big data dump. And it's going to be like a ball of yarn that a cat's still playing with. And it's so messy. So unraveling all of that, it's just, I can't even, I have a headache just thinking about it, because that's a lot of work.
But that sounds also like, I mean, if I'm going to think about, I can see why a nefarious hacker would want to hack a big company, because there is the potential for the ransom, other potentials for selling the data. Mm-hmm. But it sounds like to me like a hack on a local or regional facility would have a different motivation in place. And therefore, like, I'm going to say this, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, it's going to be less likely to be as widespread or cause regional, like when I look at food security, I look at can this population in this X geographic region, do we have resilience in our food systems? Do we have enough producers producing enough food in this region that the population who lives there can eat and nutritionally or rebuild quickly in the case of a catastrophic event, whether that's done by nature, done by humans? Do we have enough food resilience to feed ourselves? And so, I mean, the answer is no everywhere right now, but how can we get there? And so, I don't know. I guess we're looking at the same thing from kind of two different angles.
Yeah, and I think that's great. And this is actually why I really love working in food and ag, is because we all have different angles to look at, and it just informs how I proceed moving forward and how I can help safe, effective, resilient food. And I think the thing that I go back to a lot, and I hate using the UK as an example because I don't want to, but their food security is so under question right now because they rely so heavily on outside producers. And granted, they are an island. They're an island. It's a small nations. And it's scary to me that nobody seems to get that they need to protect their farmers. They need to protect their land, even though they protect their land and they're really good about green space protection. It's a strange situation. And I worry sometimes about the United States too, as well, because we actually ship a lot of our food out.
Yeah,
we produce for a lot of people, but that makes sense. We're a big nation. We get a lot of producing here. We can ship out to other countries. That makes sense to me. But at what cost to us too? And I'm not going to get on the whole like soapbox of like who's better and who deserves more. But like if you go on your question of how do we secure our nation's food and be resilient, we need to take a look at the systems thinking aspect and the whole global food supply. Like how do we affect that? How do we adjust it? How do we work with it? Not just in pricing, but safety. How do we ship it? That kind of safety. How do we grow it safely? How do we keep people safe who grow our food? That kind of conversation needs to happen. Because again, and you and I have spoken off air about this, but I'll say it now. It is much easier for small to medium producers to sell off their land to a data center or a housing development than it is to keep running their farm.
Yeah.
And that to me is wrong. That is wrong. Because I don't want to live in a world of data centers. I live in data center alley land anyways. And they're just these ugly, disgusting buildings. And I realize that I'm very grateful for them because the internet and the cloud and all these things that are important to what I do in my life and my profession. But at what cost to things around me? Because we don't build those sustainably. We don't build them with environmental friendly aspects. So to me, it's concerning. And I don't want to see farms disappearing. I drive by like 50 of them on my way to home last night. And I'm not even exaggerating. I live in an agricultural zone. And I just think, I look out and I think, man, this is all going to be gone in like 10 years. And that's the worst feeling for not only the regional area, but for the food security of our nation. Like, how are we going to continue supporting this population that it's, still growing and things of such if we can't produce for it? And then I put my security hat on, and then I just think, oh my goodness, we're in so much trouble in general. Because I start running risk profiles as I'm driving by the farms, of course, because that's how my brain starts to operate. And it's hard because I'm like, oh goodness, there's the egress ingress. I can already see cameras. I probably could sit here and hack into it in 5 minutes. Like, and the thing you said too about the small and medium not being a target. Remember, they got to practice somewhere.
Or being a target for a different motivation. But yeah, you're right. You're right.
They gotta practice somewhere.
Control Point Holding says, does it matter about the size or the companies it's connected to? Because because some of the very small or small operators use the same high tech on a budget that major players use. So if it's all connected, and like you were talking about the hardware, if the hardware gets hit, then it wipes out everybody using that particular. Or if they notice something. I don't even know the right language, Kristin.
No, you're fine. If one vulnerability has been determined, that vulnerability stays true throughout the whole equipment's life until it is dealt with. And I think the question that was being raised is the small producers, some of them are using small tech. So like first gen farmers, great example. A lot of them are coming out with they're using high tech right away because that's how they're going to catch up essentially.
Do you mean people who don't have farm history first?
Correct, but have
farmers, yeah, and they're going back to the land, so to speak.
Yes, they're going back to land, or they have enough money because they want to have a quote gentleman's farm or things like that. It is very popular in a lot of places, and I'm not mad at it. Like whatever. Or I had a gentleman approach me last night, and he said, "Well, what tech do I need on my farm? I'm starting a farm," and I was like, you need to speak to a different type of person. I'm just here to secure that tech. I can't answer to what you need. I don't even know what you're going to be. And I looked at him. I said, well, are you producing? Are you growing? What are you doing? He's like, I don't know yet. And I was like, you need a consultant, not me. But, and I said to him, he goes, well, I'm too old to work my farm. What am I supposed to do? And I said, okay, you're going to buy property to farm on, but you're telling me you're not going to farm. I said, just rent it. Something like 80% of the farmland in the US is rented anyways. So go just have to sell it to a farmer, rent it to a farmer. Wow. And it was this weird conversation. It was sort of like, it was the it was the egg before the chicken conversation. It was very bizarre. But what it made me think about it for a minute, that if you're coming into this for the first time and you've never farmed in your life, or you are really excited about farming, you're going to bring all this tech in because you think that it's going to really help you be better and get an edge, which you probably will because you don't have your manual analog processes to back up on. But you need to learn those anyways, because when that tech fails, you have no choice. And this is where I think this is something that I love about farming in general, whether you're, producing or you're actually, putting your hands in the dirt. The ability to troubleshoot and the ability to switch between analog and digital is natural. You can, this tech isn't working. Screw this. I'm going back to what I know. That is something that is so difficult to teach nowadays to people who have always grown up with tech and always been with it. So the fact that that industry is already leading the way in proper resilience, because that's resilience to me, the ability to carry on despite what's happening is resilience, right? It's brilliant and beautiful. This is where I have a lot of hope for the food and agricultural sector, even though it's behind the other critical infrastructures in terms of last at the table, and everybody forgets that we're at the table with food at the same time. But also the fact that, regulations and policy and things like that have been slow, and the adoption level has been slower, but now it's speeding up again. And now that we've got more investors that are investing in it, I'm worried that there's going to be pigeonhole moments and people won't be able to get out of it. But what I really love is the fact that no matter what happens, they'll always be able to roll back to analog very quickly.
Yeah.
And we'll still be able to keep resilience in our food supply. Now, the supply chain as a whole, can it roll back to manual processes? Not easily. We've already seen that happen with JBS when the ports closed, other things that have happened along the way. So there needs to be documented process in that as well, along with your AI picture, your videos that are not AI of your actual farm and videos of your actual farm. But yeah.
Kristin, we've covered so much ground. Pun kind of intended there, but
all the food puns always, Liz. We're just going to constantly make them.
And the ag puns, right? So I do want to give people just a chance if they have like burning questions for you, because this is like an area of immense interest for me, but not, you have the tech background. I've got the analog background. I'm like the permaculture geek and the data analyst and the cybersecurity expert here. So if anybody has specific questions for Kristin, go ahead and get those out there. And then Kristin, this is like not even the tippy top of the iceberg here.
Yeah,
so let's cover this again another time, but tell people where to find you. Kristin M. King on Substack.
Yep. And then it's the same for Instagram. So that's pretty easy for you as well. If you want to follow me there, you'll see some cat videos over there because I have cats. And then you can obviously follow me on LinkedIn. It's Kristin King as well on LinkedIn. If you have trouble finding me, you can always drop me a message. That's fine. My email is my name at ansandsage.com. And I have websites all over the place. I wouldn't recommend Googling me because my name will pop up with 15 other million women that are named the same. I should have probably kept my last name before my marriage. But ultimately, I have a podcast as well. It's easy to connect with me. It's Bites and Bites. So it's bites like you bite something, and computer bites with a Y. And I talk to all kinds of different sectors of the agricultural community. And we talk about how that intersects with cybersecurity and what we're doing and what we're not doing. Some of it's scary, some of it's really interesting, some of it's super nerdy, and then a lot of different operational technology. Professional friends of mine have come on to talk about their viewpoints on food, whether they come from the water sector or the energy sector, and how their struggles intersect with our struggles, and how we can secure our critical infrastructure in general. And then my book is coming out, like I said, so you can connect with me on that too. I'm happy to talk about that. If you do purchase it, let me know. I'll try to find you in the wild someday and sign it if you're into that. I'm sure you've done that too.
Your email address. I'll put your links to your Substack and everything in the show notes. Do you want your email address in there too?
Yeah, that's fine. I don't mind if people email me. It's an email. I can choose to acknowledge it or not, right? That's the beauty of the world that we live in. But yeah, no, I'm definitely open to talk. LinkedIn's the easiest place to get me because I'll answer your messages there. Absolute privilege, Liz. I really enjoy our conversations anyways. You make me think. I always walk away with like, wow, I didn't really think about it like that. I should really think about it like that. And it definitely jogs more out of me, which I appreciate. I love curious people, and you were definitely a curious individual.
Yes, so. Stay curious, folks. And I'm glad. I mean, it's like, I think we come at this like from such a depth of knowledge in each of our respective fields that we can feed off each other. Ha like,
again, all the puns.
Sorry, not sorry. And of course, I'm Liz Reitzig. This is the Nourishing Liberty podcast, all about your food systems and how you fit into them. You can also find me, Raw Milk Mama, over on Substack. Please go ahead and subscribe on there. It's a lot of fun to see everybody who subscribes and to interact with you all. And if you're up for it, go ahead and become a paid subscriber so we can keep on having really interesting conversations like this with folks like Kristin and all the other players in our food system. And of course, it gives me a chance to geek out and work on policy, right? Kristin, we should talk about that too, but maybe.
Yeah.
Anyways, thank you all for tuning in today. And for everybody who listens to this later, you can find me at nourishingliberty.com. Hey, drop in and say hi, folks. It's always fun to hear from people who listen to these, right, Kristin?
Yeah, I love that. I love that we have such a global community too. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So thanks again. Great topic, Kristin. Love your expertise on this, and we'll definitely revisit it. And until next time, eat for health, know your neighbor, and grow some food. See you all later.